Well, the internet as we know it in Canada is about to change. Bill C-11 has been rammed through in the House of Commons of Canada. And the House of Commons is our parliamentary position where all our politicians that we have voted in gather in one place and actually vote through these bills. Earlier on March 30th, the bill debate was suspended. It was done. The debate over the bill was done. They were no longer going to talk about this bill at all. And thus, they passed it through late last night on March 30th. What does this bill mean? Well, it's a very worrisome bill, especially to me. I'm a Canadian, but I'm not going to be seen as Canadian enough to get an algorithm boost. I'm not part of a minority. I'm not part of the LGBTQ. I'm not French speaking. I am English speaking. And this bill is meant to produce and push along Canadian values for what the government sees fit. This is a bad idea. They say it doesn't affect algorithm changes, but it also pushes YouTube to make changes to show a minimum amount of Canadian content on my feed or on your feed if you happen to be Canadian. This is one of those bills that can be manipulated by the current bodies of government and tell you what you need to watch. This is not all Canadian content is great, not all Canadian content is bad, but because I don't fall into a particular category other than being born, raised, and living in Canada, it's going to push me further down in the algorithm from everything I am reading. Let's take a look. There is a lot of stuff to this. I will link this in the comment section down below. Go take a read of this yourself. This has gone through third reading of the House of Commons. Now, this says as passed by the House of Commons June 21st, 2022. This hasn't been updated for it because there were supposed to be amendments added to them, and then they took out those amendments, and I'm going to go over that here really quickly. The summary is probably the most important thing. It's easy to go through, and then I can show you the bits and pieces that were proposed to try and take out of the bill, but stayed in because that's the way the House of Commons said, no, we're keeping this stuff. That's plain and simple. This enactment amends the Broadcasting Act, among other things, adds online undertakings, transmission and retransmission of programs over the internet. So mainly anything that gets uploaded to the internet, this is going to affect. Specifically, that the act does not apply in respect to programs uploaded to an online undertaking that provides a social media service by the user of the service unless the program are presented by regulation. And what they mean by regulation is if you are monetized, if you are making any sort of money on your programming, it falls under this act. So if you're unmonetized, you have no worries. But this means in YouTube land, up here in Canada, there's a couple options here YouTube can do. They can just demonetize every Canadian, or they can follow this act. But then if they demonetize Canadians, they still make the money and the Canadian doesn't. So it's going to be tough to see where this really lines up as passed. Updating the broadcasting policy for Canada set out to Section 3 of the Act by, among other things, providing the Canadian broadcasting system should serve the needs of interests of all Canadians, including Canadians from marginalized communities and Canadians of diverse ethnocultural backgrounds, social economic statuses, abilities and disabilities, sexual orientations, gender identities and expressions, and ages. And provide opportunities to Indigenous persons, programming that reflects Indigenous cultures that in the Indigenous languages, and programming that is accessible without barriers to persons with disabilities. So if you fall in this group, they're going to push you higher in the algorithm. Yes, it's going to produce stuff for all Canadians, but if you happen to fall in this group, it's even more so. I'm Canadian, I'm here. If I fall in this group, it'll be up here. Enhance the vitality of official languages the minority communities in Canada and foster the full recognition of use of both English and French in Canadian society, including by supporting production and broadcasting of original programs in both languages. Meaning, I'm here, English side, I'm here in the west of Canada, I will be forced to watch more French programming. And those that are in Quebec, that where they are French speaking, will be pushed more English speaking programming because they have to push the diversity equally across both sides of the country. Specifically, that the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission, the CRTC, the Commission must regulate and supervise the Canadian broadcasting system in a manner that takes into account the different characteristics of English, French, and Indigenous language broadcasting, and the different conditions under which broadcasting undertakings that provide English, French, or Indigenous language programming operate. Meaning, if you're only English speaking, you get put in this category. If you're only French speaking, this category. And if you're Indigenous, you're in this category. They're segregating how people speak. Takes into account, among other things, the nature and diversity of the services provided by the broadcasting undertakings. Ensures that any broadcasting undertaking that cannot make maximum or predominant use of Canadian creative and other human resources in the creation, production, and presentation of programming contribute to those Canadian resources in an equitable manner, not equality, equitable. Facilitates the provision of Canadian programs in both official languages, including those created and produced by official language minority communities in Canada, as well as Canada programmings in Indigenous languages. Meaning they may have to put on a translation onto my programming. They may have to translate me to French because I don't speak French. I took it in school. I already have enough speaking in English problems that even just trying to speak French got me so tongue-tied, I almost failed the course. Facilitates the provision of Canadians of programs created and produced of members of Black or other racialized communities. If you're Black, you're going to be promoted by the algorithm in Canada. That seems quite interesting. My ancestors are Black, but I don't know. I don't know what that means for me. It takes into account the variety of broadcasting undertakings to which the Act applies and avoids imposing obligations on any class of broadcasting undertakings if that imposition will not contribute in the material manner of the implementation of the broadcasting policy. Amend the procedure relating to the insurance of the Governor Council of policy directions to the Commissioner. Replace the Commissioner power to impose conditions on a license with a power to make orders imposing conditions on carrying on a broadcasting undertakings. What this is, what that is referring to, is if I want to upload to YouTube, I may be required to obtain a license through the CRTC. That I don't know what that means yet. It may possibly mean I have to pay a fee to get this licensing. This is something that, like CBC, Global, they all do things like this because they are regulated through TV, and now they're trying to make this regulation come down through the internet. And the difference here is all of these big corporations have lawyers and they have people on staff, and for them to have to pay a simple fee, they're already paying it because they're already under the CRTC. Myself, I'm not, because I am sitting here making a YouTube video from my basement of my home. Authorize the Commission to provide information to the Minister responsible for the Act and Chief Statistician of Canada and the Commissioner of Completion, and set out the Act in a process by which a person who submits certain types of information to the Commission may designate the information as confidential. So that's just saying they're going to take stats and report on it and keep it confidential. It just, yeah. Amend the procedure by which the government and council may, under Section 228 of the Act, set aside a decision for the Commission to issue, amend, or renew license, or refer to such a decision back to the Commission for reconsideration and hearing. Specifically, that a person shall not carry on a broadcast undertaking other than an online undertaking unless they do so in accordance with a license they are exempt from requiring to hold a license. Well, this is also if you do have to get a license and they revoke your license, this means the Canadian government can turn around and say, we don't like your channel anymore, we're revoking your license, you're no longer allowed to broadcast. Meaning I could get canceled by the Canadian government for even talking online. Harmonize the punishments for offenses under Part 2 of the Act and clarify that a due diligence defense applies to the existing offenses set out by the Act. Allow for the imposition and administrative monetary penalties for violations of certain provisions of the Act of the Accessible Canadian Act. Now, those two things there, if I was to say something, say, I'm not going to say it, but say someone said the N word on a broadcast that was uploaded to YouTube. Not only would YouTube flag it and say that it is harmful, the Canadian government can then turn around and fine me for saying such a word. Right? This actually did happen against the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the CBC. What they were doing, they were reporting a story on a book that had the N word on the cover of the book. And they said the name of the book. Because they said the name of the book, the CRTC fined them and told them that they had to take the broadcast down. This was done on radio television in Canada. Important here is probably section 4, because that's where a lot have said that this doesn't affect content creators. No, it does solely affect content creators, and why it's a very, very thing. The Act is amended by adding the following after Section 4. Non-applicant programs on social media service. This Act does not apply in respect to the program that is uploaded on an online undertaking that provides a social media service by a user of a service for transmission over the internet and reception by others users of the service. Applications. Certain programs. Despite subsection 1, this Act applies in respect to the program that is uploaded as described in that subsection of the program, is uploaded to a social media service by the provider of the service or provider's affiliate by the agent or mandatory of either of them, or is prescribed regulations under section 4.2. 4.2 is one of the sections they tried to remove out of this. Non-applicant social media services Act does not apply to either way. It's all talking certain things with social media, right? 4.2. For the purpose of paragraph 4.12b, the Commission may make regulations prescribing program in respect of which this Act applies in a matter that is consistent with freedom of expression. Matters. In making regulations under subsection 1, the Commission shall consider the following matters. The extent to which a program uploaded to an online undertaking that provides a social media service, direct or indirect, generates revenue. In fact, the fact that such a program has been broadcast in whole or in part by a broadcasting undertaking that is required to be carried under a license or is required to be registered with the Commission but does not provide social media service, and the fact that such a program has been assigned a unique identifier under the international standard system, which I believe under YouTube we do get this, the system's already in there. So what this is saying is if your program makes revenue, if this video makes revenue, the CRTC, the Commission, has the authority to come in and do whatever they want to it. They can take it down. They can say that what you're doing is illegal. They can fine you. It's endless what they can do. They can say you're not licensed. There is so many things wrong with this part of the Act This is why the Senate attempted to remove this part of the act. Now, I've gone on long enough talking about this bill. This Bill C-11 is bad news for content creation. It's bad news for every Canadian out there, except unless you're a corporation. If you were a giant corporation like the CBC, like Global, like Bell Media, if you were one of those, this is everything in your favor. They want YouTube to collect money and then give it to Canadian artists and TV shows, those that are making those shows, by funneling more money because they're failing media. Now, when it comes to the algorithm changes, it's going to force Canadians to see things they don't care about. It's going to put my video, mostly I talk about gaming. I don't normally talk about this type of thing. They're going to put my videos in front of someone that doesn't care, say, of Hogwarts Legacy. They're going to put my videos in front of someone that doesn't care about Magic the Gathering or gaming in general. They're going to push that algorithm out there, and then it's going to get, my engagement is going to fall down, and anything that I put up on YouTube will just fall off because the engagement will be very low, and it downvotes the algorithm changes. And when it brings it down, then all of a sudden my videos get 10, 20 views. Right now, my videos are getting decent amount of viewage. They get 100 to 200 views. I have the random one that goes a couple thousand, and it's important topics. And I have to say thank you for watching. If you have made it this far in the video, please give a like, subscribe, and share this out with your fellow creators, the people that you watch. This is a important thing. Now, this bill is now back to the Senate, and the Senate, in its final reading, I believe mostly will just push it through as is, or they just straight up cancel it. And what can we do? Well, we can send letters to the Senate. We can do all these other things. But my faith is not there because majority of the Senate was already backing this bill. There is outliers. They are people that have been trying to stand up for this, mostly one side of the aisle, but this is something that affects everybody in Canada, and it's being decided by approximately 50% of the Canadian population because majority of the people that are in the parliament are in one place in Canada. It's not a very good system. Our system up here right now is broken, and it needs to be fixed. This bill needs to be killed. It needs to go away very quickly because what I do here on YouTube, what everyone does in Canada on YouTube, is hanging in the balance. Thanks for watching. I'm your proud Canadian Phoenix Synod Shadow. Don't forget to like and subscribe.